Here's a question: why can't we just delete all the debt? Around $250 trillion exists globally. What if every country, every credit card, every loan just said, "We're not paying"? It sounds absurd, one of those ideas that feels wrong instinctively. But has it been done before? Actually, yes. If you've ever heard of the Rosetta Stone, you probably know it helped decode Egyptian hieroglyphics. But do you know what it actually says? It's a decree from Pharaoh Ptolemy V, celebrating his coming of age by releasing prisoners, cutting taxes, and wiping debts. In other words, it was ancient propaganda, but it showed that debt forgiveness wasn't rare. From Sumer to Babylon, and even in the Old Testament, debt cancellations were common. They were called jubilees, celebrated every 50 years with a ram's horn announcing that debts were wiped clean. Why would ancient civilizations do that? Imagine ancient Babylon. You're a farmer, like 80% of people. You borrow seeds or cattle, hoping to repay after harvest. Then disaster strikes, drought, flood, plague, and you can't repay. Your creditors take your land, or even your freedom. Over time, compound interest ensures land concentrates into the hands of a few, leaving the majority enslaved or destitute. To prevent total collapse, rulers would reset the system, freeing debt slaves, restoring land and rebalancing society. These weren't random acts of kindness, they were good economics. Freed citizens became productive again, boosting trade and tax revenue. Restored landowners defended their nation because they had something to fight for. Even the famous Liberty Bell in America carries a biblical reference to Jubilee: proclaim liberty throughout all the land. Freedom in this context meant freedom through ownership of land, not merely freedom from rulers. Yet over time, debt forgiveness disappeared. Why? Because creditors gained power. In ancient Greece, those who pushed for debt cancellation were branded tyrants, not because they were cruel, but because elites used propaganda to protect their wealth. When that didn't work, they used violence. Spartan kings were killed for attempting land redistribution. By the Roman era, debt jubilees were gone, and some historians argue that the concentration of wealth and land helped cause Rome's collapse. After Rome fell came feudalism, where nobles owned land and peasants, serfs, worked it. Land, once the key to freedom, now enslaved those who tilled it. The cycle reversed. Instead of freedom through ownership, ownership itself created bondage. Finance, it turns out, isn't just about coins, it shapes the structure of entire civilizations. So why not do it again? Why not wipe the debt today? Ancient rulers could forgive debts easily because they were direct lenders. The king could simply declare it. Today's financial system is far more complex. Debt now runs through banks, pension funds, and international markets. If we deleted all debt, it wouldn't just hurt billionaires. It would destroy the savings, pensions, and investments of ordinary people. In the UK, for example, about 1/3 of government debt is held by pension funds, so erasing that debt would also erase your retirement savings. It would trigger a global financial collapse, destroy trust in markets, and halt economic activity. But that doesn't mean we can't do something similar, a modern jubilee. The key, some economists argue, lies in land. Land is special. It can't be moved or hidden offshore. Most taxes discourage productive activity, tax windows, and people build houses with fewer windows, tax jobs, and employment drops. But a land value tax (LVT) is different. It encourages landowners to use or sell idle land rather than hoard it. Consider the Duchy of Cornwall, about 129,000 acres across England, owned by Prince William. It generates around £21 million a year, wealth he didn't create, but inherited because centuries ago someone said, "This is mine." The value of that land isn't from him, it's from the community around it, transport, schools, hospitals, and the rule of law. Land's value is a free lunch, created collectively, but privately captured. We can't just seize it without shattering trust in ownership, but we can tax its value. A land value tax targets the unimproved value of land, not the buildings on it. Build 50 homes or none, the tax applies to the dirt beneath. It pushes owners to use land productively or sell it to someone who will. Critics say it's hard to separate land value from property value, and sure, it's complex. But is it harder than working daily, starting a business, or paying rent forever? Hard shouldn't mean impossible. If we avoid taxing passive wealth like land, we're forced to tax productive work instead. Jobs, entrepreneurship, innovation. Countries like Denmark already do this. They assess land regularly and make the values public to ensure fairness. Using Denmark's model, a 1% UK land tax on non-residential land worth about £2 trillion could raise £20 billion annually, not enough to fix everything, but enough to matter. More importantly, it creates the Jubilee effect, redistributing unearned land wealth back to people locked out of ownership. The revenue could support first-time buyers, small businesses and students, those trying to build or own a stake in society but held back by debt or high costs. Over time, it could also reduce land prices by discouraging speculation, making homes cheaper to build and buy. Some propose the government take equity stakes, partial ownership, in homes, businesses or education instead of issuing repayable loans, aligning incentives for long-term growth. Broadly, we should tax unproductive wealth, not productive work. Instead of squeezing workers with higher income taxes or national insurance, we could tax the value of land, the one thing that doesn't move, depreciate or flee abroad. Replace regressive taxes like stamp duty, which discourage people from moving, with smarter, fairer land taxes that encourage efficient use of space. No, it's not a magic fix. Land value tax isn't a cure-all, but it's a start, a modern economic reset echoing the spirit of ancient jubilees. At least it shifts the burden from those who build wealth with labour to those who simply own it by birth or luck. Today, 1% of the UK population owns between 50% and 70% of all land, and foreign investors own enough land to fit 23 million homes. The ancient societies recognized that unchecked debt and land concentration eventually destroy economies from within. Their solution wasn't revolution, it was renewal, a reset, a jubilee. Maybe our version isn't wiping the slate clean, but taxing the slate itself, the ground we all stand on.